Advisory Board for the Nigeria Prize for Literature recently released a final shortlist of 3 candidates for the 2022 NLNG Nigeria Literature Prize, of which the eventual winner will take home a cash award of $100,000. Romeo Oriogun, author of Nomad and Sacrament of Bodies, and a finalist for the Lambda Award for Poetry. His poems have appeared in the New Yorker, Poetry Magazine, Harvard Review. Saddiq Dzukogi's poems have been published widely in some of the best poetry journals in the world, like Poetry Magazine, Oxford Poetry, Oxford Review of Books, Poetry Society of America, Poetry London, Georgia Review, Poetry Wales, and World Literature Today. Here's a second shortlisted candidate. Both of them have now joined us for a quick chat. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us on Newsday.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, tell us what the process has been like so far, and how optimistic are you that you're going to get the grand prize? Saddiq, if I can start with you.
Well, I am grateful for what this moment means. I'm not thinking about the grand prize. I love to revel in the joy of the moment, and I want to enjoy every bit of this. It's been a great process, one full of surprises and excitement, and I'm just happy to be there with friends like Romeo Oriogun and Soede Bashma Akema.
All right, so I'm actually going to throw the same question to Romeo, the author of Nomad and Sacrament of Bodies. How does it feel, and do you feel that you might actually win that $100,000?
I mean, I feel very good. It's always a thing of pleasure to be recognized back home. Saddiq and I are best of friends, and we've published in, I think, a lot of prestigious journals around the world. But I think there's something so special when you finally are seen back home. With Sweetie also, who's a good friend of mine and a fantastic writer. I feel happy to just be in this moment. As for the money, it's a huge amount of money, but I think this is the moment I love the most. I'm on the shortlist with people who I call friends and brothers. I think it's just a testament of also what we've done over time that we're here together. So I think this is the moment I enjoy the most.
Well, let me ask you, Saddiq. So tell us, what motivates you to do what you do, and what are some of the challenges of being a writer in Nigeria?
Well, for me, I have suffered from immense social anxiety, and poetry has always afforded me the language to not just understand myself, but also the world that I'm a part of. So I've been doing this for a very long time, and not just as a writer, but just as a human being trying to find language for expression. But I'm also excited that eventually I'm doing this for a living. I also teach people to write. Now it's like a case of one's passion being one's profession. So yeah, I breathe writing, I speak writing, and it's just amazing that there's a validation after all the struggles. But I'm still very young, and I imagine a lot of writers in Nigeria are faced with the struggle of a lack of platform, a lack of enough of prizes like this to encourage writing and also to foster its development across the board.
Yeah, and that's so true. The lack of a platform can seem a little bit daunting. Romeo, let me just throw this question to you. It seems that you and Saddiq are, correct me if I'm wrong, are based abroad currently. Back in Nigeria, we know that things are hard. The cost of living crisis has hit hard on all levels all over the world. When you talk about poetry, it doesn't really seem like something that is immediate or lucrative. And it seems like maybe individuals might not be pursuing this so much as a career and even as a form of education. Can you speak about what poetry has done for you, and maybe the road that you took in order to make it something that can provide for yourself and eventually get seen by the best to, you know, to the point where now you might possibly win $100,000 of prize money. Can you tell us about that journey?
I think, contrary to popular opinion, we currently in the age of poetry, the golden age of Nigerian poetry. You have a lot of young people writing poems, publishing poems, and MFA programs in the US and MA programs in the UK, and even some programs in Canada and Australia have a lot of young Nigerian writers right now studying poetry. I'm even teaching poetry. Saddiq is an assistant professor in Mississippi State University. I'm currently doing my postdoc in Iowa State University, and a lot of us are just like spread in different universities around the world. I think in terms of the challenges, I think there's something about this moment that speaks to poetry. You have the hardship, just as you said. There's also the uncertainty for a lot of young people. We've been ushered into a moment where we don't really know where we're going to. There's a political climate right now, but there's also the fact that a lot of young people are just confused. People have been out of school for a lot of months now. And I think there's a way in which poetry speaks to the anguish of the soul and to the anguish of the moment. And I think it's a reason why a lot of young people are gravitating towards this art form. No one goes into poetry to get rich. It's a tin of luck that I get to do this and earn a living for it. But I never went into this with the sole reason of getting rich or getting money out of it. I think most of us gravitate towards the art form because we love language, and it's the only art form that can really speak the language of our soul. And I've been on this now for about maybe 10 years. And reading and writing and going to school for it. And I think it's just a thing of passion, and it's something that once you're talented and it's something that once you dedicate yourself to, it's really achievable.
Well, Saddiq, some people have expressed worry over the death of literary works in African languages or even in Nigerian languages. So how can we get more authors to write in their native languages, or probably translate it so that it can appeal to a wider audience?
Yeah, I think this is also a conversation of post-colonialism, because there is a lot of literature that is available in indigenous languages, but is also, are we paying attention to those literatures? Because I do know that the largest publishing industry in Nigeria is the Hausa novels, right? And because they're all spread around the north, but there isn't the harmonizing of literature in English and also literature in other indigenous Nigerian languages, because even in the small platforms that we have across the country, each time that writers are invited for festivals, you see that there's absence of those writers who write in indigenous languages. Of course, more can be done because languages are actually disappearing in Nigeria because of the privileging of English. But I think it's an opportunity to excavate, the rich stories that we have, which are just lying there dormant in, a lot of other languages like Igbo, Hausa, Yoruba, and even Nupe, and the almost 300 other languages that we have. So I think art administrators must make conscious effort to bring those stories to the forefront of Nigerian literature, because really there is just a lot that needs to be excavated from that rich tradition.
Well said, Saddiq. And your entry for this year's prize is called Nomad and the Sacrament of Bodies, if I'm not mistaken. Can you give us a brief overview of the poem?
So the entry for this year is Nomad. Nomad is a book that talks about travel and exile. It's a book that talks about post-colonialism, a lot of stories in which people are not paying attention to. For example, there's a poem in the book that talks about the Calabar hangings, which was done by the British to, show the local populace of that region as at then that, the British is in power. And so I think I look for these very little stories because I feel like every city and every place have a story that's been untold. And so I write into those spaces and try to see what poetry can unearth. And so a lot of those poems are just those little things and just looking back at what it means to also leave home and the stories one carry along with oneself as one find a way of surviving in the world. So that's what Nomad is about.
Well, Saddiq, just before I let you gentlemen go, I'd like you to answer this question for me. We know that Nigeria has produced some of the world's best authors, and of course we even produced a Nobel laureate, but some people are worried about the country's poor reading culture. What would you say is responsible for this, and how can we get more Nigerians, especially the young ones, to read more?
Yeah, I think this, and I'm going to get into a little trouble, but I think there's a laziness of critical engagement as it relates to reading culture. And this is a refrain that I think is born out of laziness. And because I think, on the contrary, a lot of Nigerians read. It depends on what people value as worthy of engagement, because like on social media, there are like a lot of stories that are being published out there, putting out there, and you see a lot of young Nigerians engaging with it. Also, there are like a lot of literary journals right now, which are only based online. There was a journal here in America that put out their data from all of the traffic that they were getting. And believe it or not, Nigeria was among the top most places where traffic comes from. So what that tells me is that a lot of people are reading. And also, like, people, when we talk about the threat of reading culture in Nigeria, we do not talk about how difficult it is to actually get books to read, right? There's still tariff placed on book, which is ridiculous, right? It's very expensive to bring in books to the country. It's very expensive to get books across Africa as a whole. So I think we should focus on, putting policies that makes it easy to bring books and also publish books, because I believe that with the presence of books, people would read. I know, like the lengths that we go to get books to read. And I have a lot of friends who literally read all the time. So perhaps they're not captured in this survey, but I believe that most of this finding and most of the anxiety is placed in the wrong place.
Well, for your time this afternoon, and major congratulations to the both of you, Romeo Oriogun and Saddiq Dzukogi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much for having us. Have a great day.